You, Chairman Warren, and Ranking Member Van Hollen, thanks for holding this hearing. Welcome, General Bondi.
Thank you, Senator.
Good to see you. I want to raise with you something that's been deeply concerning to me, General Bondi. The 2024 Democrat nominee for Vice President actually called federal immigration agents Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. This is dangerous for our agents, it's wrong, and it cuts against and it undercuts the rule of law. So I want to ask you a series of questions, General Bondi, and if you would accommodate me, I would appreciate it. First, you'll agree when a bill is passed by Congress and signed by the President, it's law, right?
Yes, Senator.
And until that law is changed by Congress, you have a duty to follow it, right? That's what the rule of law is.
The nomination of Pam Bondi as Attorney General placed renewed attention on the role of the Justice Department and the importance of the rule of law in a politically divided climate. During her confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, lawmakers questioned Bondi about her commitment to enforcing the law fairly and without political bias. The hearing opened with formal acknowledgments from committee leadership, followed by pointed concerns raised by senators regarding public rhetoric and its potential impact on federal law enforcement officers. One issue highlighted during the hearing involved comments made by a prominent Democratic figure during the 2024 election cycle, who referred to federal immigration agents as Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. Senators critical of the remark argued that such language was not only inaccurate, but also dangerous. They warned that portraying federal agents in extreme and inflammatory terms could undermine public trust, encourage hostility toward law enforcement, and place officers at risk while carrying out their duties. The concern, they emphasized, went beyond politics and touched directly on respect for legal institutions. In response, senators pressed Bondi on her understanding of the rule of law. They asked whether she agreed that laws passed by Congress and signed by the President must be enforced as written until they are lawfully changed. Bondi clearly affirmed this principle, stating that adherence to existing law is a foundational duty of the Justice Department. Her responses underscored the traditional view that federal prosecutors and law enforcement officials are obligated to apply the law impartially, regardless of political disagreements. Bondi also addressed broader concerns about politicization within the Justice Department. She pledged that, if confirmed, she would not create or maintain any form of political enemies list, and would not use the department to target individuals based on their political views. Emphasizing independence, she stated that justice must be guided by facts and law, not partisan loyalty or public pressure. This opening exchange set the tone for the hearing, framing the central question senators sought to answer: whether the next Attorney General would uphold legal norms in an era of heightened political tension. It also established the broader debate over how political rhetoric, prosecutorial discretion, and institutional integrity intersect at the highest levels of government. As the hearing continued, Pam Bondi sought to reassure lawmakers that she would preserve the independence of the Justice Department. She stated clearly that the office of the Attorney General should never be used as a political weapon. Bondi told the committee that she would not politicize prosecutions and would not target individuals simply because of their political beliefs or past disagreements with the president. These assurances were intended to address widespread public concern that the Justice Department could be used to settle political scores. However, despite these statements, several senators noted that Bondi avoided giving direct answers when asked whether she would investigate specific individuals who had been publicly criticized by President-elect Donald Trump. While she repeated her commitment to fairness and legality, her reluctance to rule out certain actions raised concerns among critics. They argued that vague answers left open the possibility that prosecutorial decisions could still be influenced by political considerations rather than objective legal standards. These concerns were reinforced by developments in the federal courts that began to cast doubt on the credibility of prosecutions overseen during Bondi's tenure in senior legal roles. Recent judicial rulings revealed significant procedural flaws in several high-profile cases. federal judges identified patterns of errors that went beyond minor technical mistakes, pointing instead to systemic problems in how certain investigations and prosecutions were handled. One of the most serious issues involved the appointment of interim U.S. attorneys. In multiple cases, judges ruled that an interim prosecutor involved in politically sensitive investigations had been unlawfully appointed. Because the appointment did not meet statutory requirements, courts concluded that the prosecutor lacked legal authority to act. As a result, every decision made under that authority, including indictments and filings, was deemed invalid. These rulings were especially damaging because they struck at the foundation of the justice process. When a prosecutor is not lawfully appointed, the legitimacy of the entire case collapses. Judges emphasize that adherence to appointment laws is not optional, even in urgent or high-profile matters. The findings raised broader questions about oversight within the Justice Department and whether proper legal safeguards were followed. By the end of this phase of the hearing, a clear contrast had emerged. On one hand were Bondi's public assurances of neutrality and respect for the rule of law. On the other were court decisions suggesting serious procedural failures in cases linked to her leadership. This tension became central to the ongoing debate over her fitness to serve as Attorney General. As court reviews continued, federal judges issued detailed opinions outlining serious procedural failures in several high-profile prosecutions associated with the Justice Department's leadership under Pam Bondi. These rulings went beyond criticism and instead identified concrete legal violations that undermined the legitimacy of entire cases. At the center of these findings were the prosecutions of former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, both of whom had been frequent targets of political criticism from the Trump administration. In these cases, judges ruled that the interim U.S. attorney overseeing the prosecutions had been unlawfully appointed. Because federal law strictly governs how prosecutors are appointed, the courts concluded that the interim prosecutor lacked the legal authority to bring charges. As a result, all actions taken under that appointment, including indictments, filings, and court motions, were ruled invalid. This decision effectively dismantled the prosecutions and exposed a fundamental breakdown in legal oversight. Beyond appointment issues, judges raised serious concerns about how grand juries were handled. Court findings suggested that grand jurors may not have been fully or properly informed about the charges they were being asked to approve. In some instances, prosecutors were found to have misrepresented legal standards or failed to provide necessary documentation. Grand juries exist to act as a safeguard against unjust prosecutions, and any failure to respect this process weakens a core protection within the justice system. Judges also cited problems related to evidence handling. In their rulings, they questioned whether all relevant evidence had been properly disclosed and preserved, as required by law. Evidence management is a critical responsibility of prosecutors, particularly in politically sensitive cases where public confidence is already fragile. Any lapse in this area raises the risk of unfair trials and judicial reversals. Taken together, these findings painted a troubling picture of systemic weaknesses. The courts emphasized that procedural rules are not mere formalities, but essential safeguards designed to ensure fairness and legality. When prosecutors bypass these requirements, even with the intent of pursuing accountability, the outcome can be the opposite: collapsed cases and damaged public trust. These judicial rebukes significantly intensified scrutiny of Bondi's leadership. While she maintained that justice should be applied without political influence, the court's conclusion suggested that, at minimum, serious management and oversight failures occurred. The rulings shifted the focus from political debate to legal accountability, raising the question of whether the Justice Department under her supervision had adequately upheld the standards it is sworn to protect. The judicial criticism surrounding these failed prosecutions deepened as additional concerns emerged about evidence handling and compliance with court orders. In one particularly troubling development, security footage from a courthouse reportedly showed Pam Bondi leaving the building with boxes of documents shortly after a judge had issued an order requiring the preservation of all case-related materials. Investigators later stated that certain files connected to the prosecutions could not be located, raising serious questions about whether evidence had been mishandled or improperly removed. The timing of these events became a central focus for legal observers. Preservation orders are designed to protect the integrity of legal proceedings by ensuring that evidence remains available for review, appeal, and oversight. Any action that appears to circumvent such an order can undermine transparency and accountability. Legal experts noted that even the appearance of disregarding a preservation directive can damage confidence in the justice system, particularly when it involves the nation's top law enforcement leadership. These concerns prompted further examination by the courts. Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick issued a sharply critical assessment of the investigative process in these cases. His findings pointed to multiple missteps, including inaccurate legal explanations provided to grand juries and procedural confusion that may have prevented proper approval of final indictments. According to the judge, these failures were not isolated mistakes, but reflected a broader breakdown in prosecutorial discipline and oversight. Grand juries play a crucial role in the federal system by acting as an independent check on prosecutorial power. When jurors are misinformed or denied complete records, that safeguard is compromised. Judge Fitzpatrick emphasized that misleading grand jurors or proceeding without clear authorization violates fundamental principles of due process. Such actions, he warned, risk transforming the justice system into a tool of unchecked authority rather than impartial law enforcement. As these findings accumulated, scrutiny of Bondi's role intensified. Critics argued that, as Attorney General, she bore ultimate responsibility for ensuring lawful appointments, proper evidence management, and accurate representations to the courts. Supporters countered that large institutions involve many actors and that not every failure can be attributed to one individual. Nonetheless, the courts made clear that leadership carries accountability, especially in politically sensitive prosecutions. By this stage, the controversy had expanded beyond individual cases. The pattern identified by judges suggested systemic vulnerabilities within the Justice Department. The combination of unlawful appointments, grand jury irregularities, and missing evidence raised alarms about institutional safeguards and reinforced the need for strict adherence to legal and ethical standards at every level of federal prosecution. The controversies surrounding Pam Bondi's tenure and the failed prosecutions of high-profile figures have raised profound questions about accountability, institutional integrity, and public trust in the Justice Department. Courts have consistently emphasized that procedural safeguards, lawful appointments, accurate grand jury presentations, and proper evidence management are not optional but essential for maintaining a fair and impartial justice system. Failures in these areas, especially in politically sensitive cases, risk undermining confidence in federal law enforcement and in the broader rule of law. Legal experts and observers have highlighted the broader implications of these events. Every filing or decision made under Bondi's supervision is now subject to heightened scrutiny, and ongoing or future investigations may face challenges related to perceived irregularities or procedural missteps. This scrutiny is not limited to her personal credibility. It extends to the institutional reputation of the Justice Department, which relies on transparency and impartiality to function effectively. Cases involving politically significant figures, including sensitive investigations into financial misconduct, immigration enforcement, and other federal matters, are particularly vulnerable to questions about fairness and legality. The situation also underscores the importance of congressional oversight, bar association review, and internal Justice Department accountability mechanisms. Lawmakers, judicial authorities, and independent investigators play a critical role in ensuring that the highest-ranking law enforcement officials comply with legal and ethical obligations. Failure to adhere to these standards can lead to invalidated cases, diminished public confidence, and, in some circumstances, formal investigations into obstruction or misconduct. These mechanisms exist precisely to prevent the politicization of the justice system and to preserve the credibility of federal prosecutions. For Bondi personally, the combination of procedural failures, judicial criticism, and evidence management concerns presents serious professional challenges. While she continues to assert her commitment to impartiality and the rule of law, the court's ruling suggests that lapses in oversight and accountability have already caused significant damage. The episode serves as a broader warning about the risks of politicizing legal processes and the critical need for leadership that enforces, not circumvents, established legal procedures. Ultimately, the failed prosecutions and resulting scrutiny highlight an essential principle. The integrity of the justice system depends on rigorous adherence to procedure, impartiality, and transparency. Law enforcement cannot function as a tool of political influence without endangering public trust. Moving forward, restoring confidence in the Justice Department will require both corrective action and sustained oversight to ensure that justice is applied fairly, consistently, and without regard to political affiliation.